Ever wondered how companies decide who to lay off? It's a question that can spur a variety of answers, each more speculative than the last. Let's take a moment to dive into this often misunderstood aspect of the corporate world. Layoffs, though unfortunate, are a common occurrence in the business landscape. They are not the result of personal vendettas, nor are they a reflection of an employee's worth. Instead, they are strategic decisions made by companies when faced with certain circumstances. One of the most common misconceptions about layoffs is that they are solely a cost-cutting measure. While it's true that reducing personnel expenses can be a primary driver, it's not the only rationale. Layoffs can also be a restructuring move, a response to a changing market, or even a preemptive measure in anticipation of future challenges. Another myth that persists is the belief that the newest hires are always the first to go. While this may be the case in some instances, it's far from a universal truth. In fact, decisions about who to offer are often much more complex, involving a myriad of factors including but not limited to an employee's role, performance, and the strategic direction of the company. It's also important to understand that layoffs are not taken lightly by companies. They understand the significant impact it on their employees' lives. Therefore, companies often exhaust all other options before resorting to layoffs, and when they do, they typically offer severance packages, outplacement services, and other forms of support to help the affected employees transition. Now, why is it important to understand how companies decide who to lay off? Well, in a world where job security is increasingly uncertain, having this knowledge can help you better navigate your career. It can help you understand the factors that could potentially influence your job stability and equip you with the tools to position yourself favorably within your organization. So, are you ready to uncover the truth behind corporate layoffs? Don't forget to subscribe for more interesting tips and insights. Believe it or not, companies don't just draw names out of a hat when deciding who to lay off. There's a method to the madness, and it's influenced by several factors, including employee performance, company needs, and legal considerations. Firstly, let's talk about employee performance. Companies often evaluate an employee's skill set, productivity, and overall contribution to the team. This isn't just about who clocked in the most hours, or who got the most sales last quarter. Think of it as a holistic view of an employee's value. It encompasses how well they work with others, their leadership skills, adaptability, and even their potential for future growth. In difficult times, companies need to retain employees who are most likely to help them rebound. Next, we move on to company needs. This is where the company's current situation and future plans come into play. For instance, if a company is planning to shift its focus to digital marketing, it might retain employees with relevant skills and experience in this field. On the other hand, if a company is downsizing, they might decide to let go of employees in roles that are no longer crucial to their operations. Lastly, legal considerations also play a significant role in layoff decisions. Companies have to comply with laws and regulations regarding layoffs. For instance, in the United States, the Worker Adjustment and Retraining Notification Act requires employers to provide 60 days notice before mass layoffs. Companies also need to be careful not to discriminate against protected classes. They can't lay off employees based on their age, race, gender, religion, or disability, among other things. So, it's not as simple as drawing straws. There's a lot of thought and consideration that goes into these decisions. Companies need to balance their need to cut costs against the potential impact on their remaining workforce and their future prospects. As you can see, many factors come into play when a company decides who will be handed the pink slip. It's a complex process, one that requires careful thought and strategic planning. You've probably heard the phrase, last in, first out, but did you know that performance evaluations play a significant role in layoff decisions? Indeed, performance evaluations are a critical tool companies use to determine an employee's value. These evaluations, often conducted annually or biannually, assess an employee's skills, achievements, and overall contribution to the organization. When it comes to downsizing, these evaluations serve as a roadmap, guiding companies to decide who stays and who goes. Consider this. If a company has to make the difficult decision to lay off some of its workforce, it's not going to want to let go of its top performers. Instead, it will likely look at those who have lower performance scores. These scores, derived from performance evaluations, provide a quantitative measure of an employee's worth, making the decision-making process less subjective and more data-driven. Now you might be thinking, that sounds fair. After all, shouldn't companies keep their best performers? On the surface, it does seem logical. But here's where it gets a bit tricky. Performance evaluations aren't always as objective as we'd like them to be. They can be influenced by a multitude of factors like personal bias, favoritism, or even office politics. For instance, an employee who is excellent at their job but isn't on good terms with their manager might receive a lower score than they deserve. This brings us to the importance of regular, fair, and unbiased performance reviews. Companies need to ensure their evaluation process is as objective as possible, using clear criteria and metrics to assess performance. This not only helps in making just layoff decisions, but also contributes to a healthier work environment where employees are judged on their merits, not on their personal relationships or office politics. Performance evaluations can be a double-edged sword, potentially saving some employees from layoffs while sealing the fate of others. It's a complex process that requires careful consideration and fairness. After all, we're dealing with people's livelihoods, not just numbers on a spreadsheet. When it comes to layoffs, companies have to tread carefully to avoid potential legal pitfalls. In the context of layoffs, the legal framework is an intricate web that companies must navigate with precision. At the forefront of these legal considerations are anti-discrimination laws. Every company must ensure that the process of deciding who to lay off does not disproportionately target individuals based on their race, gender, age, disability, or any other protected characteristic. This means the criteria for layoffs should be objective, fair, and uniformly applied. For instance, if a company decides to lay off employees based on performance, it must ensure that the performance evaluations are not biased. If there's a pattern showing that employees of a certain age or ethnicity are consistently rated lower and therefore laid off more frequently, the company could be exposed to discrimination lawsuits. Beyond anti-discrimination laws, companies also need to adhere to the Worker Adjustment and Retraining Notification, more commonly known as the WARN Act. This federal law requires companies with 100 or more employees to provide at least 60 days notice before mass layoffs or plant closings. The intent is to provide workers with some transition time to adjust to the prospective loss of employment, to seek and obtain alternative jobs, and, if necessary, to enter skill training or retraining programs. However, the WARN Act does come with certain exceptions. For example, if a company is faltering and seeking new capital or business, it may be exempt from the 60-day notice requirement. But these exceptions are narrowly defined, and companies often err on the side of caution to avoid legal repercussions. The legal aspect of layoffs is also a realm where companies cannot afford to be reactive. They must be proactive. This involves having a well-documented layoff plan in place, getting legal advice when necessary, and ensuring that the process is transparent and respectful to the employees involved. Navigating the legal landscape of layoffs can be a daunting task for companies, but it's a necessary part of the process. Behind every layoff decision, there is a human element that can't be ignored. When we talk about layoffs, we often focus on the business side of things, the economic factors, the performance evaluations, the legal ramifications. But let's not forget that we're dealing with people's lives here. Layoffs aren't just numbers on a spreadsheet. They're real people with families, mortgages, and dreams. Layoffs take a significant emotional toll on employees. The shock, the uncertainty, the fear of what comes next can be overwhelming. Even for those who remain with the company, morale can plummet as they see their colleagues let go and worry about their own job security. And it's not just the employees who are affected. Managers and employers face the emotional burden of having to let go of their team members. For many, it's one of the hardest parts of their job. They've invested time and resources in these individuals. They've seen them grow and contribute to the company, and now they have to tell them they're no longer needed. It's a tough pill to swallow. Then there's the ethical side of layoffs. Is it fair to let go of someone who's given their all to the company? Is it right to choose one person over another based on factors that may be beyond their control? These are questions that weigh heavily on those making the layoff decisions. So how can companies handle layoffs with dignity and respect? Communication is key. Be transparent, clear, and compassionate. Provide support, whether it's severance pay, outplacement services, or job search assistance. And remember, it's not just about what you say, but how you say it. Treat each individual with the respect and empathy they deserve. Layoffs are a reality of the corporate world. And while the decision may be driven by business needs, the process should always be guided by a sense of humanity. Layoffs are never easy, but understanding the process can help to demystify this often misunderstood aspect of corporate life.